consensus is a people that has such a pedigree, such a visibility, such a power, such a thing, creates a fascination that goes well beyond globalized politics, you know, or it's one other country among others with whom to have trade or science. There is an absolute fascination there which goes, by the way, two ways, and I'm not saying Israel is about ready to relinquish the friendship with America. I'm simply saying that it's hedging its bets and that it has a feeling that America slowly but surely might be moving away from it in a more Pacific direction or in something else. So I want to finish this particular element with a position I have as a historian. The Jewish people have always been in the avant-garde. They have gone where the world has gone. If you look at it, you know, first they were in Babylon, then they left Babylon, they moved into Charlemagne's court, you had the Jews around the Mediterranean. If you do it now, they moved northward, and they, you know, Ashkenaz is created out of this first contact. And then, you know, you had Germany, you had France for a while, the UK, then you moved to America. My question about this new ethno-nationalist Israel is, if it is going to look toward Asia, is this not saying something about our own democratic context and categories? Rather than saying Israel is abandoning us, maybe one should be asking whether the future will not be a much more, I wouldn't say just authoritarian, but history-less, modern, technologically neutral, ethno-nationalist identity. In other words, I worry about our Western symbiosis more than I worry about Israel leaving us. I can imagine that Israel is a package that points to the future. And the future, some of it points to, is perhaps not the kind of move that I, as a Western citizen, would like to hope for. So this is one element. I have to say that I'm giving you here analytical categories, but my book, from which I'm not reading, is much more of a literary bent, with analyses and questionings on all of these things that I have given to you now in a more intellectual category. It's full of anecdotes and impressions. Now, one of the major impressions that I received, and I never would have ever imagined using this adjective with respect to Israel, was what was given to me the most calmly way, you know, just very calm. You know, we're autistic. What? Oh yes, we Israelis are autistic. And this adjective led me to try to understand what was being meant by this notion of the autistic Israel. Wrapped up in itself, unable perhaps to see the gaze or face of those around, brilliant autistic. This I'm talking about, you know, a genius or a chess player or a great mathematician, not someone who can't do anything. Able to do things on its own, but perhaps as a state, again I'm not talking about the researchers in the Weizmann Center or in the Technion, which have, you know, international laboratories. I'm talking about the state, its diplomats, its way of understanding itself in the world, and asking myself, if the Israelis calmly accept this notion, there's also perhaps something very valuable in the notion of someone who's completely self-absorbed and folded inward in terms of its deepest identity, with a certain inability to engage in the small little links with other people, enemies or friends. And we know that Israeli diplomacy is not perhaps the world's best in terms of tradition, and I wanted just to throw this thing that was given to me, that Israel was autistic. Then there are three metaphors that dominate the book. None of them is mine. I tell you, I'm not an Israeli specialist. I sat there like a sponge saying, well, what's happening? This country has nothing to do with what people assume it did. I was given three metaphors for Israel. One is the aquarium. The other one is the bubble, which is better known because there was even a film with that title referring to Tel Aviv. And the third one is the tent. And I describe the scenes in which these three metaphors take place. Each has a chapter. The aquarium, I was told, was, well, we are very good about, you know, we love to, you know, we can coexist. And the we can coexist goes from the secular Jew to the ultra-Orthodox or even to the passing Arab. But we must think of ourselves, Israel is an aquarium. Now, what do you think of when you think of an aquarium? Fish are swimming in silence, and they pass by each other. You don't have congregations of fish in the corner chatting or whatever. They go like this, you know. And then the final punchline given to me by the person who gave me this metaphor was, it's wonderful as long as there's not a baby piranha in the aquarium. At which point, you know, you sort of sit there. First of all, I'm sitting in the Mamila shopping center in Jerusalem, which is this brand new area for some of you who may have gone, know with Jerusalem or not, going from East Jerusalem, the old city, into West Jerusalem, and it is, you know, the chicest of shopping centers you could think you're also again, even better than California, probably more like Dubai or I don't know, somewhere else. And there are young women who are arriving and old Orthodox families, young families, so there is this mixture, but all of a sudden, when you're told it's an aquarium, somehow it doesn't feel multicultural, and it's not New York or London. It just, the silence of the aquarium seizes you, and you sort of try to imagine this valley that's full of water with the little amphoras and the lights on, and then there's the oxygen coming in with all the money that's poured into this area by the European Union and by America and its own money. And it changes your vision forever in terms of how you see Jerusalem in this context. The bubble, well, the bubble used to be, you know, Tel Aviv is the beach. They don't have anything to worry about. They don't even see Arabs in Tel Aviv. There used to be some in Jaffa. It's Jerusalem and other parts of Israel where there were Arabs. Well, I would argue that the whole bubble has taken over the entire country. And the country having been taken over by the bubble is in this frenzy of euphoria of building, creating, advancing, exploding, and it is a very wonderful, positive vision. But then you say, but you know, the bubble, is it like an iron dome which protects, it should be protecting Israel from Iranian missiles one day? Can you live in a bubble forever given the neighborhood? And maybe you can, or you can live there for a few centuries, I don't know. But certainly it's very warm and convenient to be living in the bubble. And the third metaphor, which really is the tent. Now the tent isn't a metaphor, it's a very old thing. I mean, we're talking about Exodus. And therefore this whole notion of, you know, the Sukkot are not tents, but you know, it is the notion of coming out of Egypt. And in this tent, you have the entire Jewish people, not just the Israelis, everybody else. Israel needs them. As a matter of fact, I was told by an Orthodox, very Orthodox person whom I was having a dialogue, from which Hannah will read at some point, that, you know, as a good Jew, I'm not asked to go to Israel anymore and make aliyah, you know, go back home. I am to stay as a good, valid soldier wherever I am, because the stakes for Israel are planetary, and you need a maximum amount of Jews out there in their respective societies to be like bridgeheads or soldiers for the Israeli state. And in this tent, what happens when these non-Israelis arrive, and they come through all sorts of conferences, and when they arrive, are they listened to? And the answer is a screaming no. And I give you as an example the presidential conference where I was sitting in the same panel with Jeremy Ben-Ami, who created J Street in America for peace and Israel, and a man named Danny Dayan, who is the head of the settlers movement. And Mr. Ben-Ami started talking about the Titanic. If one did not have peace, that would, you know, inevitably go toward the iceberg, and it would be a catastrophe. And Mr. Dayan simply replied, talking about the Jewish tent, and says, in the tent we all love each other, and that's what counts. It's the love we Jews in the world have for each other. So there was no political debate whatsoever, and the whole public there was 100% on the side of Mr. Dayan, and not so much on the side of Mr. Ben-Ami. So these are the three metaphors. What does this really talk? What does this say in a deeper sense about the Israeli society? Now you can say, well, I wrote this in 2012. There have been elections. Things are completely changed. If you read the newspapers, you hear that there is an attempt, a small attempt, to make women pray at the wall by themselves. I mean, you know, in real prayer with the talis, and then you hear about the willingness and the desire of some members of the government, not all, to draft the ultra-Orthodox. And then you hear about moves for peace, you know, little sounds, and you say, well, this victory was important. It's really changed things. I think it will change things, but I would be not too optimistic about a total transformation of the country, because this is a very shaky, fragile coalition. And the desire of the lay camp to get rights not to have themselves shut in a corner by the ultra-Orthodox, the desire for more social justice and so forth, is not at all incompatible with the bubble and autism and with Israel having moved somewhere else. These things continue and can, there's no incompatibility there, because there is a very strong understanding of an ethno-nationalist identity. Now you can say, once upon a time you had a socialist Zionist vision which had nothing in common with this land was given to us by God, period. No more, no lawyers involved, because just, God gave it, period. Now you have people more or less arriving into a centrist position which has left the old left far away, very far away. Even though they're courageous, even though the civil society has incredible human rights organizations which are the ones who denounce most of the problems of Israel, are denounced by Israelis themselves. You don't have to have journalist arriving from somewhere else to discover them. The entire country has taken a substantial move to the right, and we can discuss politics if you want, but it's not really the point of the book. Now I wanted to, and then I think I would like to open up the discussion rather than sitting here and giving a lecture. I just would like to give you 3 examples of this incredible Israel, which has no history, but which manages to fuse together both its archaic past and its completely postmodern, ultra-modern present and future. Again, you would think that those the men in black who are sitting in their yeshivot belong to one Israel, and the people who are doing the startups on the coast and selling billions of dollars worth of products around the world are another Israel. And although the ultra-Haredim, the ones with the fur hat, are still not learning enough math and English, to put it mildly, there's a whole new category of very Orthodox, modern Orthodox, who are extremely observant. And what I would like to talk about in this new Israel is the fact that our contemporary planetary identity, cybernetics, the computers, actually help keep ultra-Orthodoxy going. What do I mean by that? In the Aufklärung period in which you're supposed to wash this Jew and turn him into a human being without identity, you were also in industrial societies in the 19th century where the work week was rigid. And the Jews stuck out because they didn't work on Shabbat. And they stuck out even more recently because they would stop working on Friday very early. And no one gave them the possibility to start working on Sunday because that was the holy Christian day. Now today, if you're a really great, super Orthodox modern Jew, well, you turn off your computer, actually the computer turns itself off, smack at the nanosecond of the beginning of Shabbat, and turns itself on. At that point, Beijing and Tokyo, the stock markets are going along. So cybernetic time and Talmudic time fuse beautifully. It was Christian Industrial Revolution time that did not fuse with Talmudic time. The modern world allows you to be anything you want, wherever you want to be, travel around, create your own small colonies of identities, and I will end with that at some point, but so that, in a sense, the metaphor that I would use, the principal metaphor I would use to try to describe Israel today is simply a Möbius strip. The properties of the Möbius strip is that it's actually one surface that then is twisted and becomes what seems like the underside, but it's not the underside. If you take a pencil and you follow it, the line never stops. And to me, that is Israel. And there are bends, and there are moments in time in which Israel bends in one way, and other moments in time in which Israel bends in another way. And this particular metaphor allows to continue the continuity of the Jewish people in Israel, while also seeing that it can seem upward or backward in identity. Now, 3 examples of what I'm talking about, this incredible fusion of Talmudic orthodoxy and ultramodernity. None of them are invented, and they are in the book actually. One is that there's a very religious university, the opposite of the Hebrew university, called Bar Ilan in Israel. And there's a seminar going on right now in Bar Ilan to discuss among the specialists a very important issue. Do you know what tefillim are? Tefillim are the leather black straps men put on to pray, uniting the brain, which is of intelligence, and bringing it closer through the fingers to the heart. It's a way that you go to God praying with both your mind and your emotions. So the question at Bar Ilan today is, should you put tefillim on a cybernetic arm? Imagine this. We're talking not a wooden arm, a cybernetic arm, which means that it's linked to the brain, and therefore, by willing, the muscles move, and the cybernetic arm, maybe it's not like a great orchestra conductor, but it certainly would allow you to do this or that. Now, if you have this cybernetic arm, should you put tefillim on it or not to pray? This, to me, is the ultimate beauty of this entirely complicated, long Jewish tradition, which goes without a bend even, from the ancient past of the Torah to the cybernetic arm. And this is one of the properties of the Jewish people, is given the fact that they understand that they're put on earth to finish the work of God with Tikkun Olam, I assume that the answer will be yes, because the cybernetic arm is replacing a